各位朋友你好，我是史东。在今天节目中呢，我们跟您探讨的是克什米尔的问题。我们今天节目的主题呢是论克什米尔的这局棋，这一盘棋。我们在今天节目中呢，非常高兴为您请到的是这方面的一位专家，他是头一次在我们的节目中出现。他是一位印度籍的美国人，他是一位在智库做事的一位这个研究学者，他从事智库研究呢，我跟他聊了一下，已经将近有20年的时间了。他现在在华盛顿 DC 的一个叫做中美研究中心，这是一个在海南的一个中国的基金会成立的一个在美国的一个智库，相当有意思的一种安排。这是我头一次听说有中国的钱在美国呢建立基金会。他是这个基金会叫做中美研究中心的高级研究员。那么在今天节目中呢，我们会和他谈谈他所了解的这个有关于克什米尔和印度和这个巴基斯坦和中国之间的问题。他的名字呢叫做 Mr. Gupta。我们现在就把 Gupta 请到我们的节目之中。Welcome, Mr. Gupta. Thank you for coming to my show.
Thank you.
I want to start with this. This is a little paragraph I downloaded from Wikipedia of all places. This is what it says. It says, in August of 2019, as Home Minister Amit Shah, I hope I pronounced his name correctly, of India, told Parliament a decree abolishing Article 370 of the Constitution that gave a measure of autonomy to the Muslim majority Himalayan region has been signed by President, and measure came to force at once. I don't know too much about what's going on in that region. I think most of the people in the world probably don't know too much about what's going on in that region, but we all have a sense something big is coming up. This is what I need you to help me to shed some light on it. First of all, what is the most common question you encounter when you go around and people ask you, hey, what's going on over there? What's the most common question you encounter?
The most common question that I encounter is if and when a war will break out in the region, because the one thing they do connote from all these developments, they hear the word Kashmir,
right,
and they hear Kashmir, and they hear India and Pakistan, and they think war. And so that's the main question. Is this a precursor to a war breaking out on the in the nuclearized environment of the Indian subcontinent?
Tell me why Modi is doing this. You can answer this question at so many different levels. Pick your level where you want to start, and we'll go from there.
It's an interesting question, and one I'm sure everybody is very keen to know, because this is a very dramatic step. Let me frame it this way. The BJP party, which he leads, it's the Bharatiya Janata Party, is India's center-right and right party, which also has very large right-wing sections within that party. One of the founding premises of that party and founding grievances of that party was that Kashmir was not integrated whole at the time of partition of the Indian subcontinent in the late 1940s. India and Pakistan became separate countries, and Kashmir's status within India was kept somewhat in a state of initially suspended animation, and then it acceded to India on terms which did not make it an integral part of India. And the BJP party has never swallowed that aspect of Kashmir's loose autonomous status within India. The fact that it is the only Muslim majority state within India and has not been integrated into the full fabric of Indian political life makes the BJP want to centralize and control and integrate it fully. That is kind of the historical background to this. Secondly, Mr. Modi, in his manifesto going into the election earlier this year, had mentioned that Article 370 would be abolished. Of course, all parties say all sorts of things in its manifesto, but I would say that, the BJP in the late 1990s in its manifesto had talked about detonating a nuclear device. It did so in spite of the incredible international opprobrium that it got at that time. So it's a kind of a little bit of a brazen party which is ready to take these sort of risks. It was there in its manifesto. Modi came with a huge mandate, and he felt that the political wind was behind his back to take this decision now, which could not be delayed down the line, just in case, his political capital seeped away. So this is just some of the factors which came into Modi's decision to do this now. It has long historical antecedents, but the real moment is because he got elected by a huge majority and felt that he could do it now and probably get away with it.
I can sense a national pride play into this, which is probably a very strong element to Modi's action. What you just said, or from Modi's perspective, will make sense only if successful on this. I mean, my understanding is Article 370 has been existing for like 70 years now, right? So what makes him think he can do it this time where the past president or Indian people cannot do it the time before?
Great question, because you would think that with Kashmir having that autonomy within India, it would be easier to win hearts and minds and bind Kashmir more within the fabric of Indian political life, and that you would not have to take these sort of centralizing, hard-headed measures which have no consultation and which essentially kind of grasp Kashmir and bind it forcibly and regardless of Kashmiri opinion into the mainstream of Indian political life. And that's why I would say it seems easy to do on the surface, but I mean, at the end of the day, this is about winning hearts and minds, and this is absolutely no way in which it will win hearts and minds in very significant and important pockets within Kashmir, which have a very significant Muslim majority, and where essentially the heart of the Kashmiri resistance resides. That heart has not been broken sufficiently, and that heart will continue to beat even more powerfully, making life that much more challenging for the Indian military, paramilitary, and political system to integrate Kashmir. And which has both bilateral, regional, and international ramifications, frankly.
It sounds like what you're saying is Modi's move is destined to fail.
He is hoping, of course, that it will not fail. And there is a significant body of opinion in India which feels that, you know what, maybe if we just grasp Kashmir and prize it out of its current autonomous cocoon and into the fabric of the Indian nation, the way China has tried to do with Tibet, that we will have greater control and people will come to terms with it, that India will be able to bring development to Kashmir in a bigger way, and that will change hearts and minds. But that is not how separatist movements are brought within the mainstream, and particularly separatist movements which have consciously not been defeated politically or militarily. And so let me just back up a little and suggest that Kashmir isn't in rebellion and secession as a state per se, but there's a significant feeling within the Kashmiri mainstream that they deserve their autonomous status, and that autonomous status itself has been to some extent eroded by India. And right now, Modi is, regardless of the erosion of that status, that is completely being denigrated now, and they are forcibly being brought into the Indian nation. And I cannot see how this will succeed over the long term in a peaceful and in a cooperative way, frankly.
How would you characterize the relationship between the people of Kashmir and people of India before this incident took place?
That's a great question. You know, in the 1950s, 60s, and in the early period, there was a real willingness of Kashmir to be to bind itself to the Indian nation, though maintain its autonomous status because it had a very distinct identity. And that was quite a big deal, considering the fact that Kashmir is a Muslim majority state and India is a Hindu majority nation. And it just would have shown that secularism is something which can succeed even in poor developing countries. But starting from, I would submit, about the early 1980s, when India began to rig elections in Kashmir so as to have its own folks who would then take its own dictation and govern Kashmir, it was at that point that India began to lose hearts and minds in Kashmir, and it never quite got around to being able, in part because there was an insurgency in Kashmir and there were military means therefore used to put the insurgency down. India never quite got around to being able to reach out to the hearts and sentiments of many Kashmiri people, and that's a situation that has persisted today. But looking at it from the other end, in India, it's an interesting point because there is a dichotomy of opinion in India. They understand that this sort of forcible integration goes against India's constitution, constitutional principles, and just at some level, basic political and human decency. And you'll see a lot of op-eds and pieces in kind of left-leaning papers which allude to this. But when I talk left-leaning papers, I'm talking mainstream commentators talking about this. But what has been a little bit surprising, not entirely surprising, has been the fact that there's also this very strong opinion that, India has tried to do so much for the Kashmiri people. The Kashmiri people have not been forthcoming. They have not been appreciative of what India has tried to do. Maybe it's time to forcibly integrate them, forcibly bring development to them, and maybe that way they might, at some point of time, this fait accompli might help alter the dynamics of India's relationship with Kashmir. And after a period of discomfort, everybody will learn to live happily together. So there is a very significant body of Indian opinion, nationalist opinion, but which is very wide, which holds this view. And that's why at this point of time, early, there is considerable support for Prime Minister Modi's decision to revoke Article 370.
You mentioned that Indian people, a lot of Indian people complain that Kashmir is not appreciative of what Indian people or government has done for them. Could you give me some example? Are they talking about economically, or what are they talking about?
What they're talking about, Kashmir there has been an insurgency in Kashmir, and because of the insurgency, the Pakistanis did get involved in a big way through sort of supporting and fomenting cross-border insurgency, and also sending fighters across who have then conducted fairly severe and grotesque terrorist deeds. So there has been a lot of loss of life, of course, civilian life, primarily Kashmiris, but also a lot of Indian military and paramilitary lives in Kashmir. On top of that, the fact of the matter is, Mr. Modi says that he's going to bring development to Kashmir, but the fact of the matter actually is that in terms of development indices, Kashmir is right at the forefront ahead of most of India. And the reason for that being is India has plowed huge amount of funds into Kashmir. I'm talking over these last 70 years as a means to win hearts and minds economically, which has not succeeded. And therefore, this blowback of terrorism which has happened, as well as the fact that so much money has been put into Kashmir, and which is not showing the desired results from the Indian side. And we must also remember, Kashmiris have right and access to India fully. So you have a lot of Kashmiri nationals working all over India, earning money, sending money back home to their parents. And all this, at some level, it seemed to be kind of ungracious on the part of the Kashmiris, that they are not reciprocating for what India has done in terms of defending life in Kashmir, economically helping out in Kashmir and developing Kashmir, or alternatively allowing a livelihood for Kashmiri people in India. And that has been the narrative that, high time, maybe these people need to be shown through force that they must learn to integrate into India, because we've been good to them and that goodness has not rubbed off at the Kashmiri end.
Let's talk about Modi's motive. We know that there's a lot of support in his party and in his country on moving this way and taking these steps. Judging from what happened since then, internationally, India, Pakistan, China, or U.S., where do you see this things going? Because there's a lot of news report about this. This one says, this is from Chinese news, says 80,000 troops are gathering around in that region. I'm not sure. It's probably a combination of Pakistan and India or Kashmir or whatever. Again, they reinforce my doubt about Modi. Did he ever think this through, or he just move forward with it?
Oh, one thing we can be certain about, regardless of what the results are going to be, they have thought through this in great detail that they are going to go ahead with this action. Where the chips might fall is something that they will deal with later. And their belief is that India has sufficient standing in the international system that it will be able to tide over what will temporarily be some sort of opprobrium within the international system at this action. To be frank, in this early stage, you would think the Indians have made the correct decision in that regard, because there hasn't been as much international criticism per se. But yes, and that is because of India's standing and its diplomatic partnerships with important countries in the West, and it has always had the Russians also on its side, etc., etc. And Modi has made an outreach to the Muslim world during his first term, the UAE, to the Saudis and all. So they're perhaps kind of, to some extent, holding their tongue on this. But the point I'm trying to get at is the consequences of this are long-lasting and will not go away. And the revulsion that this has created in important parts of the world will come to haunt him at a later point of time. I'm not talking many, many years later. I think continuously going forward, it has really dimmed India's standing, democratic standing, as well as its identity as a nation in terms of how it has gone about doing what it has in Kashmir, because it goes against the very ethos of many of what India stood for as a secular nation in many respects. So I think right now we are not seeing that heavy criticism.
Maybe it's all behind closed doors right now.
Yes, it is behind closed doors right now, but I would say the enormity of what has happened has created a kind of phase of suspended animation at this point of time, and people are still digesting the extent to which matters the status quo has really shifted. And it takes time for that digestion to happen both regionally and in the international system. And once that is digested, the results of how people will treat India going forward is not going to be the way they treated India prior to August 5th. And it's that image of India which has suffered lasting damage for quite a while. And potentially, if Pakistan wants to raise the heat in Kashmir, the folks in the international system will first be pointing their finger to India as the lead cause or the provocation for the subcontinent to again become so tension-ridden to the point of almost a breakout of hostilities.
How do you look at the Chinese reaction to this? The reason why I bring it up, especially there's a corridor in Pakistan that is very important to China's One Belt, One Road project. Is this going to disrupt that? Or judging from where you stand, how do you evaluate Chinese reaction so far? I think it's very measured too.
Oh, absolutely, very measured. Let me first get to the Belt and Road element. I would submit the Belt and Road element and the CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, will not be impacted at all by this decision. That is, it's beyond the purview of this. India has, CPEC runs through a place in Pakistan called Balochistan, which itself has its own secessionist tendencies. And the view is that India has been trying to foment these sort of secessions, not secession, but rebellious tendencies on that part by financing it and perhaps selling arms. But I think just within this last month or month and a half, that strategy, if there at all was that strategy on the part of the Indians, suffered a grievous blow because the US government listed one of those separatist entities in that region, the Baloch Liberation Army, as on its terrorist list of terrorist entities. And so Belt and Road, CPEC, I think, is not the issue. Let's get down to China's essential reaction out here, which has been very, very measured. 2 points out here. First, Pakistan is a valued friend of China, so China needs to show this is not ho-hum, standard, everyday, back to business stuff. I mean, it needed to show a degree of revulsion and anger towards this. So, and that's why initially there were, the statements came out it came out right away, immediately after India made this decision. So that was more kind of showing political support for Pakistan without taking any specific measures per se. The second element out here is that there's a part of Kashmir which actually is disputed between India and China. It's called the Aksai Chin area, which China has in its effective control. And in the course of his speech on August 5th, Amit Shah talked of Kashmir being integrated whole into India, and he talked of all territories of Kashmir, which include Kashmir, which is held by India, which is administered by India, the part of Kashmir which is administered by Pakistan, and also that part which China has in its effective control. And this raised heckles in China. Was India trying to rewrite its position on the boundary negotiations related to China?